economics, economic inequality is defined as the unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups in society. This encompasses problems such as income inequality, racial inequality, gender inequality, etc. Income inequality measures the distribution of income between different groups in society. Income inequality in the United States today is rampant. Since the 1980s, the national income share going to the top 1% has increased dramatically, whereas the national income share going to the bottom 50% has been decreasing. This means that wealth has been increasingly concentrating among the wealthiest members of society. The richest 0.1% take in about 196 times as much as the bottom 90%. To get a better understanding of income inequality as a concept, let's first discuss how we measure income inequality. One of the ways that economists use to measure income inequality is something known as the Gini Coefficient. To better imagine the Gini Coefficient, let's imagine a graph with the cumulative share of national income on the y-axis and the cumulative population ranked from lowest to highest on the x-axis. Next, imagine a perfect 45-degree line on this graph. This line is known as the line of perfect equality. As you can see on this graph here, the bottom 75% has exactly 75% share of national income. Inversely, the top 25% has 25% of national income. So income here is perfectly distributed. In other words, poorest percentage of the population will have the exact share of national income as the richest proportion of the population. This means that income in this society is perfectly distributed, therefore depicting a society with perfect equality. Next up, each individual nation has its own Lorenz curve, and the Lorenz curve basically depicts where the share of national income flows to the percentage of the population ranked by income group. In the example here, we have that in this country, the bottom 50% receives only 10% share of national income. This therefore depicts a pretty unequal society. This would similarly mean that the top 50% receives 90% of national income. This graph also implies that the bottom 90% receives 25% of the share of national income, which therefore also implies that the top 10% has 75% share of national income. Therefore, if we take the area between a nation's line of perfect equality and their Lorenz curve and call this area A, and the area beneath a nation's Lorenz curve and call this area B, then the ratio of A divided by the total area under the line of perfect equality, which is the area A plus B, then you would get the Gini coefficient. So just to summarize, the equation for the Gini coefficient is A over A plus B. The Gini coefficient allows us to get a pretty good idea when comparing the level of equality between different countries. The Gini coefficient is on a scale of 0 to 1. This is because when the Gini coefficient is 0, this represents a country with perfect equality. This makes graphical sense because if you take a look at a graph with perfect equality and the Lorenz curve is equal to the line of perfect equality, then the area A in the equation does not exist. Therefore, the equation would be 0 over 0 plus b, which equals to 0. Therefore, 0 represents a situation in which a country has perfect equality. On the other hand, if we imagine a situation in which in a country one person has 100% of the nation's income, then the Lorenz curve would look like a vertical line, with the one person having 100% of the share of national income and the rest of the population having 0% of the share of national income. In this situation, the area between the Lorenz curve and the line of perfect equality would be A, and B would not exist because there is no there is no area below the Lorenz curve. Therefore, when calculating the Gini, A divided by A is equal to 1, and therefore 1 depicts perfect inequality. Therefore, the closer a country's Gini coefficient is to 0 would mean that the country is quite equal, as the national share of income is quite equally distributed among its population. And the closer that a country's Gini coefficient is to 1 would depict a highly unequal society. The Gini index is simply the Gini coefficient times 100, and this is just another way to measure and compare the level of inequality amongst different countries. So if we look at the data, we can see that South Africa currently has the highest Gini index at 63, meaning that it is currently the most unequal country in the world. You will also see countries such as Namibia, Zambia, Central African Republic, Lesotho, etc. And a common trend is that many of these countries have had a history of corruption, racial discrimination, segregation, etc. On the other hand, these are the countries with the lowest Gini indexes at around 28 to 25. These include countries such as Denmark, Iceland, Belgium, Czech Republic, Belarus, Ukraine, etc. And many of these countries often have really high social safety nets and welfare systems, and consequently have pretty equal societies. Therefore, this answers the question of why does inequality matter, and why do we study the Gini coefficient? Inequality matters because it is directly associated with the policies that a country has. These policies include issues such as education for different minority groups or income groups. It reflects the housing situation, the level of segregation in a country. It also reflects discrimination in the workforce and generational mobility, as well as corruption and trust in local government officials and policing. The level of inequality in a country is also often correlated with the citizens' perception of happiness and fulfillment in their own lives. For example, South Africa has been consistently ranked as one of the most unequal societies in the world, and this isn't surprising given its long history of apartheid and segregation. On the other hand, Norway is consistently ranked as one of the happiest countries in the world, and this isn't surprising given its strong welfare and social support programs, as well as free education, healthcare, etc. Inequality matters, and that's why it's important to understand it in order to fix these problems. Thanks for listening.